Okay, next item up is item number 2. It's a public hearing, general plan amendment in GP 13-01 to adapt the 2013-2021 update for the City of Yuba City housing element. Mr. Gale.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Darren Gale. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the city. This evening it's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Gastelum from PMC. She is the consultant that has been working on our housing element. As you might remember, the housing element is one of 7 requirements of our general plan, and it's either good for 4 or 8 years. And we've been going through the process of adopting our housing elements. At this time, I'll turn the time over for Jennifer, and after her comments, she can answer any of your questions. This is also a public hearing, and then we would ask that you adopt a staff recommendation that's in the staff report. So I'll turn the time over to Jennifer.
Great. Good evening. Thank you, Darren. Good evening, council members. My name is Jennifer Gastelum with PMC, and I have a quick presentation to run through what's occurred to date. Is this for me? Thank you. All right, we're going to review the housing element as it is right now. We're going to summarize some changes that we received from the state throughout the process, as well as some third-party comments that were received on the document, in hopes of seeking adoption of the housing element as well as the environmental document. As Darren said, the housing element is one of the 7 mandated elements of the general plan. It includes existing as well as we project out for the next 8 years the needs for the community. Housing elements used to be on a 5-year cycle, and with this update they have switched either to an 8-year cycle, which is what our intent is. If cities fail to meet the deadline, which is next week, without adopting a housing element by then, they would be subject to a 4-year cycle. That is not our intent. The state sets forth the schedule, and that's why things have changed, because the regional transportation plans are on an 8-year cycle, and they're now aligning with the regional housing allocation plans. So everything's kind of succinct, which they used to be on different schedules, which makes everything a lot smoother at this point. Lastly, the housing element is most unique because it is reviewed by the state, and that is we submit a draft to the state for a 60-day review, and then we receive comments from them, and then we bring it back to you for adoption, and then once it's adopted, it's submitted for a 90-day review. Some of the key updates from the last housing element to this one are that SACOG created a data packet of all the new 2010 census information, and so all of that information was incorporated. So new Department of Finance information, as well as new local homeless count information, and Alta Regional Sierra Center information regarding persons with developmental disabilities, and I'll get a little more into that later. The second key major update to the housing element is that the last housing element identified a number of sites to meet the 4th round RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation process. And through that, some annexations were supposed to occur, and some land was supposed to become available. But with the downturn in the economy, some of those things didn't happen. So what happens is we have to carry forward that number or identify ways to address it. So I'll get into that. But basically, addressing the RHNA from the last housing element is the major change, and then making the housing element go from the 2013 to 2021 cycle for this next round. So here's the 4th round and the 5th round cycle, just so you can see the difference between the regional housing needs allocation. It's also important to identify that we're identifying land at varying densities to meet these income categories. It's not the city's responsibility to build these. It's the city's responsibility to identify land zone appropriately, as well as to set forth ways that you can work with developers to get this done. So the 4th round RHNA was over 4,000, almost 5,000 units broken up between the 5 income categories. And the way that we identify land at the very low, extremely low, and low income category is that we look at a product that is a high density multifamily product. We're looking at a 20 to 30 unit an acre product. With the 5th round RHNA, you can see that the projected needs significantly went down to 2,600 units. Basically, With the regional transportation plans came growth projections, and those were used for the regional housing needs allocation. And the focus is on more compact development, on development where there's metropolitan areas, which means some of the more rural outlying areas didn't get as large of a need. So it actually made things more realistic in terms of what you have land for and what can actually be identified as vacant land to develop for the future. This table just kind of goes over what the process that we have to do. It's kind of a rigorous process with HCD of identifying land at varying densities and based on what projects were approved and developed. So in the end, the housing land inventory in the document shows that the city has enough land to develop should the economy support it and the market actually turn around a little bit with development occurring. So there is enough land to meet your regional housing needs allocation for the next 8 years. A couple of key programs that were added to this housing element. We like to say that this housing element is a minor technical update because we didn't go back and reinvent the wheel on this. You had a good solid document to begin with that was just updated 5 years ago. So basically what we had to do was identify programs to meet the regional housing needs allocation as well as meet a few new state laws. Clean up a few things that HCD likes to see. So allowing for single room occupancy as a permitted in the C zones. There's a lot of small lots that are vacant, but adding in a program to identify that the city would work with developers to do lot consolidations should a project come forward. And then with the Lincoln East specific plan, identifying some commitments to that annexation and that specific plan project. And then cleaning up some language on definitions for allowing for transitional and supportive housing. So the process that we took was we had a workshop planning commission meeting in November. Then we submitted to HCD November 20th. We worked with HCD. We had a conference call on January 9th and addressed their comments as well as third-party comments that we received to get a conditional certification on January 17th. The conditional certification says that if you adopt the housing element as is today, you will be found in compliance pending the 90-day review, which it's not taking 90 days, not that you do have a conditional compliance letter. The housing element was taken to Planning Commission on January 22nd, and we are here today. We did receive comments, third-party comments from the California Rural Legal Assistance, and so we worked with them as well as the state. They wanted to clarify, again, as I pointed out, the land inventory that we had to carry forward and identify that there was enough land to meet the RENA from the last round as well as this round because some of those annexations didn't occur. So just clarifying that information and adding in environmental constraints and adding in a new timeline for the Lincoln East specific plan, and then cleaning up what was realistic, and especially in the Central City specific plan, there is development potential there, so making sure that was all identified. So just adding in a little bit more recent information was the most important. And then, again, there was several commitments on when the city's moving forward with, what the city is in control of regarding the Lincoln specific plan, and identifying what the city can commit to doing and allowing for development at different densities in that. So we're here tonight, and like we said, by May, but it's not going to take 90 days because you already have a conditional compliance letter. So I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the council members at this point in time? Okay. If not, then I'll go ahead and open it up for a public hearing. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item may do so by going to the podium. If you can please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening, City Council members. My name is Tatiana Reyes. I am an attorney at California Rural Legal Assistance, and on behalf of Everardo Garcia Navarro, he is a low-income resident of the Yuba of the city of Yuba, and on his behalf, we submit these comments. So, as Jennifer just explained to you, tonight you are being asked to adopt the housing element update. The housing element is, as it was previously explained, one of the components of the general plan, and local jurisdictions are required to review it on some regular basis, just to make sure that the housing needs, the current housing needs of the residents in the city, and also the future housing needs are properly taken care of planned for. So we are, if you will adopt tonight, you are going to adopt the 2013-2021 housing element update. So in doing so, local jurisdictions are required to engage public participation to make sure that that document actually reflect the housing needs of all persons in the community. And as Jennifer just explained, the City of Yuba had the first and only public meeting back on November. And that was before the Planning Commissioner meeting, and after that draft was approved, it was immediately submitted to HCD, and CRLA claims that the City of Yuba has not made sufficient efforts to engage public participation. Right, the people in the community have not had the opportunity to have a say and actually have their vision or their concern taken into consideration when this document has been planned. Indeed, after the housing element was certified, there was no public notice issue, just letting the community know that a planning commissioner meeting was going to be held to request adoption of the element. CRLA received notice, or actually the agenda of that meeting, on January 22nd, the same day and only a few hours before the meeting was going to take place. And so we appreciate that some of the concerns that we have raised have been taken into consideration, and we just hope that the city implement the programs as it has been requested tonight, and that the housing needs of different segments of the population, as described in the letter I submit, are going to be reflected in the element. Thank you very much. I'm looking at the time and it's scaring me.
Great.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item?
Hi, I'm Steph Racino, and I wanted to make a couple of comments. And first, I want to apologize. I wasn't at that meeting. I had some health problems.
Stephanie, if you can step up to the microphone and please state your address as well.
Okay, 1660 Sharon Drive in Yuba City.
Thank you.
And I noticed on there, like, the point-in-time study, you know, the homeless population. I want you to know that it's nowhere near reality. I've dealt on today's radio station. I had 3 people call in. Every one of them were homeless, but none of them were counted as homeless. The reason why is because under VA rules to get VASH housing, if you're homeless and you couch surf, not you had a roof over your head, you're not homeless. If you accept an offer and just spend one night, even though maybe you were homeless for 2 years and you're waiting, you know, for your turn, sorry, you're back at the end of the line. You're no longer homeless because you were housed. That's the kind of stuff veterans have to put up with all the time when they don't. They come back, they're fractured, they're damaged, they're not the same. The economy sucks, there's no jobs. And now we're going to get even more because the government wants to put out more people in the military and give them 40 grand and have them go into the reserves and the Guard. Well, how long is that going to last? You know, after taxes, we're not talking that much. And if you can't find a job, despite the rhetoric that you hear on how great it is for vets, if you believe that, I'd like to sell you my car. It's over at Ronco. I found out motor mounts are sort of necessary, so are brakes and a couple other things. But at any rate, you're not addressing the needs of the handicapped. Nobody is. And the VASH, it's not a program. It's some pie-in-the-sky baloney. I can give you a report, which I have at the house. Sorry, forgot it because I had to get some extra rides here. It's basically detailing the abuses that are going on. We're talking about transitional housing, which we have a very big time lack of. We don't have temporary housing. We don't have any units that are capable of handling disabled. I'm not saying that I'm old, and I'm not saying every one of you are doing the same thing, but the older we get, a lot of times the bodies wear out. An accident, 1 minute, it can change your life. What if you're in a wheelchair? What's accessible to you? You're going to find out that's not addressed either. So at least for veterans and low income and all that, if you're a 100% disabled vet, you're considered low income or very low income, depending on how many children that you have in there. We're very target rich in veterans, and yet the city of Yuba City is not addressing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this item and bring it back to the council for further discussion, comments. Seeing that there are no additional comments, what's the council's recommendation?
I'll moved.
Okay, I've got a motion.
I'll second.
A second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public communication. You are welcome and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on items listed on the agenda when they are called. Public comment on items not listed on the agenda will be heard at this time. Comments on controversial items may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select a representative to express the opinion of the group.